Hello and welcome to blackdoctor.org. I'm your host, Shamika Rhymes. Let me know in the chat where you are watching from tonight. Well, November is Alzheimer's Awareness Month. And for so many of us, this topic hits home. Maybe it's a parent, a grandparent, or someone else that you love who's starting to forget familiar faces or moments that you've shared. It's painful, it's confusing, and it's something that our community experiences far too often. So tonight, we're opening up the conversation about Alzheimer's, what it is, how it affects us, and how we can show up for our loved ones and protect our brain health. Now, you're not alone in this journey, and together we can make a difference. So make sure that you also share this with your network. I see some people checking in. Hello, Gerard. Hello, Asheville, Gastonia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So let me introduce you to tonight's guest. Dr. Sansa Curtis, she is a licensed functional medicine doctor and longtime patient advocate. She's uniquely bridging science, culture, and compassion in chronic disease care. She founded her practice, 3D Wellness, in 2011 outside of Atlanta. Let's welcome Dr. Curtis.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, and you?
Doing well. So glad that you're here and was able to join us for tonight's conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
So let's start with the big question. What exactly is Alzheimer's disease and how does it differ from like normal aging or other forms of dementia?
Well, Alzheimer's disease is more from a genetic predisposition, and also it's more a metabolic. So it's what we call diabetes type 3. So if your brain cannot take in the amount of sugar, then it starves the oxygen and it just can't function very well. Where dementia is another form. I think people get those often mixed up, but it's more from a vascular for people having high blood pressure where the vessels are not functioning properly. And then we just have old aging, typical aging where we tend to get forgetful. Our hormones go down, our brain function goes down, and it's just that phase of life. So,
Okay, so it's would brain fog be included in that? You know, with the hormones declining and stuff.
yeah, you see that. Yeah. Doing perimenopause and menopause. A lot of people think they're having, Alzheimer type issues when they're going through that change. And it is a change.
Yeah. Oh, I see Indianapolis checking in. I see you guys. So why does Alzheimer's seem to disproportionately affect the Black community compared to other groups?
I think it's the social determinants of health. And, we're in the desert, so we don't really get the type of foods. And honestly, the foods that we consume today is not the same foods that we consumed when we were kids. They're genetically modified, and they just have a lot of, dyes and different things in them. And it's just the food just isn't there.
Mhm.
Also, we don't have, sedentary lifestyle is also key. And we have a rise in other diseases, obesity, diabetes, and hypertension that are all precursor to Alzheimer's. And it just hits our community because most of the time they just ignore us. When you go to the doctor, they just think oh, that's just old aging, or that's just Miss Nettie. There's nothing wrong with her. Mm-hmm. And we're not diagnosed until later on with the disease, where we can see reverse or see, in early stages if it's caught early, where it doesn't get to the point where it's so debilitating.
Okay. And I forgot to tell you all in the chat that if you have questions tonight, please drop it in the chat and we'll get to those throughout the evening. Well, how does family history, lifestyle, chronic conditions like the ones you mentioned, high blood pressure, diabetes, increase that risk of developing Alzheimer's?
Well, like I said earlier, Alzheimer's is diabetes type 3. Mm-hmm. And honestly, what we eat, we always think everything starts in the brain with Alzheimer's, but it also goes back to the gut. Our gut is considered our second brain. So how we metabolize our glucose in in the liver also plays a big role in there. So if you have liver disease, that's a big thing there. One of the markers is ApoE. It's a genetic marker. And I like to tell patients genetics is the bullet in the gun,
Mhm.
but epigenetics or lifestyle pulls the trigger. So just because you have that gene doesn't mean that you will have Alzheimer's, but the gene is an indicator that there's things that you can do to circumvent or prevent yourself from actually going on to having Alzheimer's as much as you can. And because with obesity, you have inflammation and high blood pressure, you get the vascular, and things just don't you don't get the oxygen, and you start to build the plaque and different things up in the vessels, so that causes the oxygen not to get to the brain as well.
So, what are the most common early symptoms that families should watch out for, and when should they seek medical attention? Because I keep going back to thinking what you just said about, oh, that's just Miss Nettie. She just always acts like that. So how? We'll come back to that as well because I have a second question with that. But so, what are those common early symptoms that people should be looking out for?
One is forgetfulness, like forget where you bring the keys and different things, or people forget, or constantly repeating yourself over and over again. But then adding that with they can't complete a daily function, they get frustrated, agitated. That's usually early signs that it's more than just the forgetfulness. I'm not there yet, but I walk in the room sometimes. I'm like, where did I put my keys?
Yeah, same.
So, but it's different, when you say, Mom, you told me that already. I know, or just get very agitated. And, that's the biggest sign. And your loved one, and when something's off. And that's where you become an advocate, or, for your loved one, because they might not be able to have to be that advocate in the midst of when going to the doctor and not being dismissed. And you can tell the doctor, like, no, this is not her normal behavior.
Mhm. Now, is there a specific type of doctor that, if this happens, say, you're noticing that your loved one is having these symptoms, is there a specific doctor that you should take your loved one to?
Well, you can always start with your primary care, and there's a couple of screenings. You can do the mini mental assessment evaluation, and they just ask a couple questions, kind of see where they are with the time. And then they have the Montreal cognitive assessment as well. And like they have them like draw a clock, put the hands on it, count backwards, different things of that nature for assessment. But really, there's Quest Diagnostic. They have a couple of tests that you can catch early on. And one of them is the amyloid beta, and along with the ApoE, that is looking at the genetics. And then you have the phosphorylate Teo, and that one, those two, you can ask the primary care to get those. If those two come back positive, then you can ask to go to a neurologist. And the interesting fact that most African Americans do better when they see an African American provider.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because they can get that empathy, they can understand what's going on. And neurology, there's only 3% of African Americans that are actually in the neurological field, doctors.
Wow. Wow. So what happens once they go to the neurologist? Do they have to repeat those same tests, or is there imaging like MRI, or
They
what?
can do an MRI, to see, making sure that it's not Lewy bodies, dementia,
Mhm,
versus, seeing what type other things you want to rule out.
mhm,
You want to rule out any pathology and making sure it's not a tumor or anything of that nature. And then after that, they can put them on medication.
mhm.
I'm further up, so I believe in lifestyle and
Okay.
making lifestyle modifications, changing their food. There is a gentleman, he's Caucasian, but he came out with the RECODE, Dr. Dale Bredesen, and it was actually Alzheimer's prevention. And it was like 10,000 steps a day decreases your risk factor for Alzheimer's and dementia by 52%. I'm going to say that again.
Yes. Yes.
10,000 steps a day decreases your risk factor for Alzheimer's and dementia by 52%. That is something that doesn't cost you anything but time.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. And you have to get out there and walk. And even by doing 3,800 steps a day, decreases it to 25%.
Wow. Okay. So, it doesn't matter if you're walking inside or outside, just walk,
Just the
right?
steps, just getting the steps. And you don't have to do them all at one time. You can, we all wear the wearables, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
tell you it's time to get up and move. Like, okay, you've been sitting there too long, get up.
Yeah.
So you want to just get those steps in, because movement, you get circulation, you get oxygen, to the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very important. And making sure that the other thing is making sure you're getting sleep. I think we throw sleep out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, a lot of people have obstructive sleep apnea. And I had a patient one time that had Alzheimer's and had sleep apnea, but he was taking his mask off in the middle of the night, and the insurance company, Medicare, would no longer pay for his CPAP machine because he didn't use it for 4 hours consecutively. And I'm like, well, how can you hold that role to somebody that has memory issues?
Right.
So we had to switch to a BiPAP, and then I had his wife to just wake up and making sure that she put the mask on. And that improved his memory, because now his brain is getting oxygen, because he's not stopping breathing in the middle of the night, and his oxygen isn't dropping and starving the brain.
I'm glad you brought this up, because I'm curious if you're noticing that someone's having those issues, is it important to maybe start with the primary, but is it safe to say, let's also go get a sleep study as well to see if this is part of the problem? Because maybe and I don't know if this is possible, that you maybe don't have dementia or Alzheimer's. It's just the brain isn't getting the oxygen it needs.
That is correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Sleep deprivation is, same symptoms of depression, sleep deprivation, and memory, because you're not getting sleep. You're not restored sleep. So yeah.
Okay. So that makes so much sense. Like, I think you're right. We don't think about how important sleep is. So how much sleep should one be getting?
At least 7 to 8 hours a night, and then quality of sleep. Because most people with obstructive sleep apnea, they sleep all the time, but they're not getting into that REM sleep. So the REM sleep is where your body gets that restorative, and we begin to heal. That's how we heal. And interesting, because you have the lymphatic system is basically just imagine the car wash of your brain.
Yeah.
So when you go to sleep in the circadian rhythm, your brain actually shuts down, and then the lymphatic system actually washes all the toxins in away. And then when you wake up, your brain expands. So I always tell my patients, when you first wake up in the morning, have a cup of room temperature water, and you drink it, because you need to be hydrated, because your brain needs also hydration. And so I think just simple things, that making sure we're hydrated, making sure we're getting enough sleep, and good quality sleep.
And getting the steps in.
And the steps, yes.
Yeah. So let's talk nutrition. What should that look like?
When you look at your plate, it should resemble the color of the rainbow. You want to be eating all the phytochemicals. And if you're eating, I always tell my patients, if you eat out of a bag in a box, you're going to end up in a bag in a box. Because all the processed foods they just deprive you, and then they increase your glucose, and they make more glucose go to your brain, and then your brain can't handle it. So eating good quality home cooked food. And if you're in a food desert, there's a gentleman, I don't know his name off the top, but he calls himself the ghetto gardener. and he teaches inner city individuals how to like take like Cheshire drawers, old drawers,
Mhm.
and do a garden. Or in New York, he was doing like in this inner city, he was planting a community garden in between the buildings, and then the community kicked in. So those are some of the things that you can do as a community. Get a walking group,
Mhm.
get a community garden, find a piece of land. It doesn't even have to be close by, but find a piece of land and share the responsibility and get what God gave us from the ground. And
Mhm.
even the ground has changed. So it's changed the nature of the food because the soil isn't the same soil. We don't rotate. I remember my grandfather, they had a farm in Arkansas, and
Mhm.
every year they would let the land rest. And they, if it, that they plotted the garden on this side this year, the next year they did it on the other side because the land had to rest.
Mhm.
But now we're so in this agriculture where everything has to be done yesterday. And we're even creating chicken in a factory that's not even coming from the way God created it. So we don't know what we're eating these days. And so you
Mhm.
have to be careful. If I always say you want to grow it, or either go to the farmer's market and get things from a farmer's market.
Okay. Well, what role, which we kind of mentioned this a little bit, but what role does stigma play in delaying the diagnosis or treatment of Alzheimer's, particularly in the Black community? I know you mentioned that, sometimes you have a better outcome going to a Black doctor, but what is that stigma also?
The biggest thing that one patient said something to me and it really stuck. And she said, I used to take care of everybody else, but now people are taking care of me. It's releasing that independence that they can no longer take care of themselves. And I think that's the biggest thing that people fight. It's like, no, I can do this. And
Mhm.
they don't want to be considered crazy. They don't want to be considered of having, you know, handicap. It's like, I took care of you. Your mom's, I took care of you. I'm your mama. How that we know how we talk, right? I'm
All
your
right,
mama.
right.
so, uh, so, so you still my child. I still can whoop you and all that kind of stuff. But they don't want
Uh-huh.
to lose their independence, and they don't want to be seen as a burden to their family. And I think that's the biggest stigma that people with that disease walk around with.
Oh, okay. Okay. And so that probably does delay the diagnosis and treatment because they're not wanting to go to the doctor like I'm fine, there's nothing wrong. And then if you try to take the keys like you're not driving anymore, that's a whole nother fight.
Yes, yes. I mean, yes, um, and it's a hard, like you said, it's hard to watch your loved one. My mother passed in 2020, so it's hard to watch your loved one where they become that child and you have to take care of them, and they're not that strong matriarch or that patriarch that they used to be.
Yeah.
And that's hard to watch. And it's actually my mother-in-law. I remember she had dementia secondary to chemotherapeutic drugs because she had cancer.
Mhm.
And one month she was driving, and the next month she didn't even know where she lived.
Oh, wow.
So it was that drastic change that literally it just makes you cry. And then sometimes on their behalf, they don't remember. So
Mhm.
actually, they're okay, but it's watching from the outside to see your family just deteriorate. The strong woman that used to take care of everybody now can no longer take care of herself. And I think that's hard from a caregiver's perspective.
Absolutely. What kind of you mentioned medicines earlier, what kind of medicines can be given for Alzheimer's?
There's different patches in Aricept. I'm not, I don't really dive into that, but
Okay.
there are medicines. And the interesting thing, though, in Japan, they just approved stem cell therapy for mild to moderate Alzheimer's, and they gave it IV and they gave it in the spine, and that kind of reversed it.
Oh,
or
wow.
stop the progression of it. So I think as we stay on the cutting edge of science, we'll start to see more and more
Hmm.
studies that are coming along. But you got to get a control of this diabetes. I mean, obesity is what we're about 45% now, somewhere 42, 45%. And that's a big risk factor because that's insulin resistance.
Hmm.
And so, and I think the biggest thing is stress. And that's
Yeah.
another thing I think we don't really even account because what happens in a stressful situation, your cortisol goes up. Once your
Hmm.
cortisol goes up, it increases your insulin. And then it's just your blood sugar now is up. And that's when we're doing some of the testing from a functional medicine perspective. We look at your fasting insulin because your hemoglobin A1C takes 3 months. Your fasting glucose can change with what you're eating, but
Hmm.
your fasting insulin also gives us an indicator how well your pancreas is or your body is dealing with the sugar, or are
Hmm.
you eating too much? And so that's when you can kind of say, hey, you need to pull back. And they have tons of things out now, the continuous glucose monitor that, you know,
Hmm.
I was doing, I thought was doing all the right things. And I was eating, I was drinking oat milk. I wasn't eating my calories. I was drinking it and it was spiking my blood sugar.
Oh, wow.
So I took it out and I'm fine. So there's a whole bunch of things that we can do before we get there. And that's really usually my role. I want to help you not to get the diagnoses. Let's help you before the prevent, I'm working on the prevention side or the early side that we can kind of preserve that onset.
Okay. I want to remind everybody in the chat, if you have questions, please drop it in the chat. Let's talk about the caregivers. Like you mentioned, it is very hard to watch a family member or loved one decline. What are some of the biggest emotional and financial challenges that caregivers face?
The finances is crazy because, you're going to lose if you have to stay home with your mom or now even younger people, siblings. A young lady told me her sister was 52 and she had early onset. So to take care of them, that means you're losing work. There is no short-term disability for that, and then that creates an issue. And then if you have to put them in adult daycare, if you don't have that, runs anywhere from it can be $6,000 to $12,000. It can be expensive.
Mhm.
And depending on what you're doing, and if they're in memory care, then that also is expensive. I had a friend of mine that actually moved her mom to Mexico because it was cheaper to take care of her mother in Mexico, and she had round the clock care in the home
Mhm.
for whatever her mom's social security was, and that's how she was able to take care of her mom until she passed, and she had Alzheimer's.
Oh, goodness. So, how can caregivers get the support or resources in their community to kind of manage the demands of caring for someone with Alzheimer's? I know you mentioned, I don't know why I thought the adult daycare didn't cost that much, or maybe I'm thinking of maybe senior centers. Who knows what I'm thinking about?
No, they
But
come. Yeah, I think it was. I may be getting mixed up with the continuous care, but it's about 100, and when I looked it up, it was about $110 a day for adult
okay,
daycare.
yeah.
So it depends on how much you're putting your parent in that. And if
Hmm.
you have other siblings, then you can share the responsibility.
Hmm.
Or if you have grandkids or other family members, then you can share because it does take a toll on the caregiver to take care of that person.
Hmm.
And then I always tell my caregivers, if something happens to you, I have a very good friend of mine, patient, and if something, I said, you have to take care of yourself because if something happens to you, you're an only child. Who's going to take care of your mom?
Yeah.
So that is, and so you have to really bring that reality that, sometimes if they have insurance, but even then, um, yeah, they don't take care of your parents like we would take care of them, you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then, you go to adult daycare. I couldn't get my mother to go when she had cancer. She's like, no, I don't want to go. She wanted us to take care of her because that is what the matriarch, that's what we did. That's what we do in our community. We don't put our families in homes, but sometimes they have to because they wander away and it's not safe for them. So,
yeah. The emotional toll, like what can a caregiver do to kind of help manage that and manage burnout from, the stress from being a caregiver?
find a community group, support group, find a therapist. I tell all of my patients, we need a therapist like we need a hairdresser. I know that's a very big stigma in our community, but seeing a therapist doesn't mean you're crazy. A therapist will help you navigate those things that we just don't have the tools to do. And you have to take care of yourself. Like I said, if you don't take care of yourself, we only have one life to live. We only have one body. And it's not like a car or house that you can go buy and trade it in. Whatever you do, your body keeps the score. So you have to also prepare yourself. Like that time will come when that parent will go on, or that the one you're caring for will go on. But then you have to make sure that you don't make those same, the same mistakes. So you're not in that situation where somebody has to take care of you.
Right. And I think that also goes back to the walking, the sleeping, and the eating healthy, for the caregiver as well. Would
Yes,
you say? Yeah.
most definitely. I mean, like I said, when you get on the plane, what do they tell you? Put the mask on yourself, then you put it on the other person. And we don't think that way. We think it's like, like my patient, she got to be there for mom, but she had caregivers that was taking care of her. She was fortunate where she had the finances there. And I said, you're going to have to walk away and trust God that the caregivers are there. They're in your house, that they're going to take care of your mom. So when you get ready to take care of her, you're 100%. You're top notch.
Well, you mentioned the research and or advancements in Japan, but are there any other new research or advancements that are being made in Alzheimer's prevention, treatment, or detection?
Dr. Dale Bredesen, he has a program. It's the Recode. It's great for mild to moderate, but if you have advanced, then to me it's kind of almost a waste of money, because you have to have that caregiver that has to be on top of it to make sure that they're giving them the supplements and making sure that they're taking care of their food, making sure they're eating, and helping them with their sleeping. And some of them have the sundial where at night they want to roam. they don't want to go to sleep. And that, sometimes they'll need different medications and different things of that nature. But we're still working on it. I think they're coming up med beds, and I think it's just controlling some of their, not even agitating them as much, because if mom again is getting upset and you want to confront her even more, you're going to make matters worse. So sometimes it's just easy to just walk away and then come back. 5 minutes later, she's forgot the whole conversation. So and so it's just with the studies and different things, is controlling the stress in you and them.
Okay. Can you explain what the sundowning is?
Is where they just get like their energy, like a baby gets day and night mixed up, and they get agitated, and they just want to stay up, and sometimes they get delirious.
Okay. So why is it so important for more Black participants to be involved in Alzheimer's clinical trials? And how can we build that trust? Because again, going back to the earlier conversation about, sometimes we're dismissed when we go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm. We have the Tuskegee, we have all, when we look at medical apartheid with Harriet Washington, and you read that book, how that we were experimented on, I think that goes a long way. And so nobody wants to be experimented on, right? And so I think when you see we have a good neurologist that I refer a lot of my patients to in Atlanta, and she's a woman of color. So when you walk in, you see a neurologist as a woman of color, then you do have a sense of ease. And then when they present to you that, a study, and some of the studies that we're doing, they're not done on people of color. So in order to get the data, we need to do it on people of color. Mm-hmm. And so they're breaking through like MS, but like Alzheimer's. But who wants to volunteer for that? Because nobody wants to be, the study. And you get the myth where you're going to get not regular, placebo, but no, you're going to get the regular medication because they want to see what's, they're not going to let you go bad. Things get worse. So, just doing the studies and seeing people that you trust, and various different organizations are popping up of color that are presenting. Like I know for MS is We Are Ill, and different patient advocate groups are coming along. So including those studies, and they're looking for people of color, and understanding that a lot of people think they can't afford it, but when you do a study, everything is covered.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So usually all the medical visits are covered, the medicine's covered. So the myth that you have to pay for studies, and some studies they even give you a stipend to be a part of the study.
And I don't know if people even realize that everything's covered, or that there is a stipend. So maybe that is the incentive for them to participate. Maybe.
Yeah, all your medicine. So if you can't afford it, is for your medicines, and it's a study. All your medical visits are covered. All your MRIs are covered. All that is covered with the study when you do the double-blind studies.
Okay. You guys, if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We've got a few more minutes. So what are some, what do you think those myths or fears are around clinical trials? Because, I would be like, even as you were talking, I was thinking like, what would I be afraid of? I think I would be afraid that things would get worse, or that, I think I'm afraid of the unknown.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing. Afraid of the unknown.
Yeah.
What are the side effects? How is it going to affect me? It hasn't been tried. Well, I don't want to be a guinea pig, that to try things on, but they're really controlled. And if there's something, like, so you're going to the doctor on a regular basis, and there are exclusions for different studies. So if something does happen, you can be pulled out of the study. Some people drop out of the studies if they no longer want to participate in the study. So it's not like once you're in a study, you're locked in forever.
Okay.
So you do have rights. It's not like, you're going to jail and you can't get out until your time is over. You do have rights when you're doing the study. But I think that's the biggest thing is, fear of the unknown. But when people are in the studies and they're getting better, and now we have the data to kind of help other people, it's like organ donors, it's different things. We, people of color, are the last person on the list to get our organs. And same thing within the studies, because we don't participate in those studies. And it's like, what if I do this study and I can't even qualify for the drug, and that sometimes is reality. Once it comes out, you might not even qualify for the drug.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see a lot of people saying, thank you for sharing this. This information is invaluable. Hazel says she worked in a Alzheimer unit for over 20 years and thanks you for letting people know about this. So thank you guys for tuning in. What can we do as a community through education, policy, or family engagement to reduce the impact of Alzheimer's and promote brain health for future generations?
We have to go wherever the people go, and that's our community. So most churches have a health and wellness ministry, and bringing people in and letting people know that, making people aware of the different studies, or making people aware of where they can go to find a doctor, what things are available, having a community garden. The other place we go is our hairdresser. Now I'm reaching out to the barbers, and that's our community. We
Mhm.
we don't go to the country club. Our country club is the beautician and the barbers. That's the first person that hears all the gossip and all
Right.
the things there. So by partnering with where our community is, like barbershop, that's where we have to come to and make people aware of these things. And I've spoken at different barbershops and beauticians and salons about just being healthy.
Mhm.
And you bring this up, and it's interesting because the other thing I think we don't take in consideration is how toxic our world is, and how toxic even for women our beauty products are that we put on. Like a woman, by the time she walks out of the house, she puts on over 320 um, toxins on her body by the time she puts makeup and all the other stuff in there. And toxins are stored in the tissue and the bone. So most of the time through Alzheimer's, that's the time through menopause, and we start to break down our bone. We have osteopenia, osteoporosis, and all those toxins come flooding out, and they actually take over the brain. They make the brain fog even worse. So, making sure that the things that we're doing early on, that we're not
Mhm.
living in a burden in a toxin world. I do a lot with hair, and it was the relaxers. Now it's the protective styles. As far as the canicle hair, it's nothing but chemicals. And where are we putting the chemicals? We're putting it on our hair. And that's
Yeah.
where right to the brain. And it's going right there. And they actually showed MRIs and a different thing of the brain with people that, you start to see deterioration in the white matter of the brain because of all the toxicity that we're putting on, in our scalp. And even hair dye. I just came across something about the dye that we put in our hair. So I think we have to be not only what we eat,
Mhm.
but what we put on our body. Um,
Wow. It's like, what can we have? Can we have nice things?
well, there's in FYI, there's a app that I always have patients. It's a Yucca app, and you can
Mhm.
scan and see how toxic your products are. And there's another one called Think Dirty. So those are some things. So we just we have to do the best that we can
Mhm.
and not stress out. I mean, because stress is gonna, you know,
Right.
just gonna get us one way or the other. But what we can do, like the walking, making sure we're as toxic free as we can, the drinking, the sleeping. Once you do those things, you're you are that much further along than somebody else that's not even making an effort to do for those things.
The Yuka app, how do you spell that? Just in case someone.
Yuka.
Okay. Yuka. Yeah, I've never heard of those apps. I'm gonna download one of them just start scanning stuff so I can see
You'd be
what.
surprised. You're like, I thought this was clean, and it's not. It's like toxic waste there that we're actually putting on our body, and we don't even think about it.
Yeah. So what to wrap this up? This has been such a great conversation. What do you want those watching to know about, whether it is the prevention or the treatment or anything about Alzheimer's or the caregiving aspect? What do you want folks to take away from this conversation?
Be your own advocate. And I think that's the big thing. Be your own advocate, or be the advocate for your loved ones. Don't just take no for an answer, get a second opinion. You are paying, whether you're paying that provider and you are their customer. And if you don't like what they're serving, you go somewhere else. We go to eat somewhere and we go to a grocery store. If we don't like the service, we'll go someplace else. But we will go to the same provider and get the same answers and not get any, and not get any solutions. But
Mhm.
we need to start looking for looking for things. And I thank you for the Black Doctors Org, because this is a platform where people can learn, where are those people, where can I go, who can I seek out for that care. And it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily, there are other people that may not be of color, that do have a heart for people, and they're actually doing it for the right reason. So you just have to find that person and connect with that person, and don't stop. Just don't stop until you feel comfortable with your provider.
That is great advice. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Curtis, for joining us tonight, because this conversation has been, I obviously with the chat, has been very valuable tonight. And I know you've opened my eyes, and I'm going to open some apps when we get off of here, because now I need to and I'm walking, like, I've been starting my walks, but I'm going to make sure I continue to walk and sleep and hydrate. So, part two of this conversation will be on November 20th, right here on blackdoctor.org. So, make sure you guys come back and join us for that. For more information on Alzheimer's, head over to blackdoctor.org for more information. There's articles and resources on the website. Again, thank you for joining us tonight, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Good night.
Thank you. My pleasure.